American and British voters share deep roots. In 2024, they distrust their own leaders too. I'm going to read into this piece from the Association Press, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from the Association Press with the headline that American and British voters share deep roots. And in 2024, they distrust their own leaders too. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share this across social media so others are notified of this video. So every now and then, since this election, I've done 1 or 2 odd videos, excuse me, of things outside from the British media establishment. And I think this is a fascinating piece that I've kind of read a bit of it already, but I think read it in full in a moment. Because there are some similarities between Britain and America. While there are obviously quite a lot of distinguishments between our 2 countries. We always talk about sharing our values of democracy, of freedom of expression, and believing in what is righteous and justice, that kind of thing. You know, we consider ourselves, 2 nations, to be of a moral high ground, of moral compass of some sort. We generally have that belief in ourselves, I would say. Obviously, things, perceptions and that has been different, but I always feel there has always been this connection. I have 1 or 2 family connections from here in Britain to America as well. I've been to America a few times, and I found all the times that I've gone to America, I always found the nation a fascinating country. And even though there are still many places, there are so many places, so many states, so many cities I want to visit in America. I hope to do more in the future, but I felt whenever I've gone there, I felt that even though I was a tourist, I felt welcomed. I didn't feel any sense of being treated indifferently. I felt at times I felt I was just like treated as another human being with the same things. I'm not sure what the position is with America when it comes from America to Britain. I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably be all right. I'll probably be the breeze side. I don't know if it'd be on the same level. But one thing that has definitely been felt is that a lot of people, regardless of whether you are Republican or Democrat, Labour or Conservative or whatever, things have changed a lot. Now, in the 4 years that Trump was president, a lot of things happened under his presidency. Obviously, the COVID pandemic obviously had a major impact, as it did here in the UK. There were a lot of things that were said by the American president, and there were things that former Prime Minister Boris Johnson said at the time, things that they really shouldn't have said, like Boris Johnson telling us here in the UK that we should just take it on the chin and take the virus on. Donald Trump saying about drinking certain bleach or whatever, and saying this in daily conferences, and some of those American people actually doing what he said, and they found themselves ended up in hospital because they actually listened to what the President of the United States actually said, rather than listening to a healthcare expert, which is extremely shocking. Words have power, and if you are not careful with them, especially when you are someone in a position of power, they can really influence people, and they can destroy them, and they can break them down. Without a shadow of a doubt, trust in politics has really hit lows. I would say trust in public. I obviously can't speak enough about American politics, but I do try to keep up with what's happening in America as much as I possibly can. But I would say there is probably some distrust in American politics as well. Probably even some deep distrust. Probably because of some of the things that have people's lives. The question that you have to ask yourself is, whenever there has been a new president or new government in place, whether it's from state, from county, or even on the way at the top to the president himself, you have to ask yourself when it comes round to these elections, both here in Britain and in America, has your life gotten better? Do you feel better off? Do you feel that your kids' future are better off? Do you feel that the town or the city that you live in, you feel better off? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself. Is your public services better off? Lots of these questions, I think, is worth asking yourselves. And a lot of people will probably say, I mean, here in Britain, they would say no. We feel a lot worse off. We feel our public service system is a lot worse. So we feel that many of our high streets are run down and nothing's come of them. We've had councils going bankrupt. We have an NHS crisis overwhelmed. We have a poor education system. We have crime on the loose. We have an immigration problem. There are many, many fundamental issues, and obviously Brexit compounded a lot of our issues that we already have, that we were having, especially with the NHS being with the austerity. That's really hurt Britain a lot, and to recover from that will take a long time. I think some of the actions and words from former President Donald Trump, such as the January 6th Capitol riots, it's a permanent scar on American history. That, regardless of what you think of Trump, that was under his watch. He was the president. At the end of the day, the buck stops with him. He is your commander-in-chief, and he's the one who ultimately made the decisions. Now, you can speculate about whether he was involved in it or whether he said he didn't. He said certain words and said certain phrases. At the end of the day, he was still the president of the United States at that time, and he should own up and take responsibility for his actions on that day, and he did not. That's just the fundamental facts. You can point out, this mayor didn't do this, or I wasn't called up and did this. He knew what was happening. People were telling him. He was even watching on the TV when he got back from that last round speech. The decision to try and stop Muslims coming into the country when he first initially became president as well was one of the most bizarre things as well. And I'm sure many people from America will share more comments down below of some of the things that he's did. But you can see that just by some of the things that I've talked about, that if we do feel that there's a lot of work to be done. Now, some people will obviously say Joe Biden hasn't really brought back trust in America simply because of how old he is, maybe. I don't know. Some people have said that he's done some good. You guys, those in America, can speak for yourselves and tell me in the comments down below. Do you feel better off after Trump got ousted and Joe Biden is now your president? Do you feel that America is now better off? Let me know. But we've had the same political party in power for 14 years here. And while we are very skeptical about Keir Starmer and Labour, we definitely feel we need something different. And we're kind of tired of all the consistent scandals that are taking place in the Conservative Party. It's been going on and on and on. And we just need something different. We really, really do. So there's some of my thoughts. Let's have a look and see what the Association Press has to do with these comparisons about Britain and American voters here. So, distrust has settled over the campaign trails in the United States and the United Kingdom ahead of July the 4th, like a soggy summer haze. On that day, British voters will choose a new parliament, an election expected to finish with a Labour government after 14 years under the Conservatives. Americans across the pond, deeply polarised by the rematch between Democrat President Joe Biden and Republican Donald Trump, will mark Independence Day in something resembling unity with barbecues and fireworks ahead of their vote on the 5th of November. There's much to celebrate on the 4th of July for one of the world's biggest democracies in the vegetable kingdom that gave rise to it. 248 years after they split and set off on slow, troubled journeys towards granting all citizens the right to vote, both remained rooted in the Magna Carta, the English document signed in 1215. It sets in writing that leaders, including kings, presidents, and their governments, are not above the law. The nations have become close friends and Stuart allies. And that's how it started. As for how it's going, the run-up to the July the 4th, 2024 Independence Day for one land, Election Day, for the other offers a snapshot of stress tests facing voters in each country. I'm just very disheartened because I don't think any of the parties know what they're doing. Dartford, England resident Jackie Richards, 77, said of a country's election. But then looking at yours in America, it's not that great, is it? Every democratic election is at its core about who voters trust their country to go about and running their lives. It's true to a big extent. Debates are candidates amplified tests in real time, never more so than during Thursday's showdown between Biden 81 and Trump 77. Biden's halting performance did the opposite of building confidence, even among some of his most loyal supporters. Trump, meanwhile, repeated his lies about the January 6, 2021 insurrection and his record as president. That's only the most recent example of why distrust and a sense of resignation dominates the emotional landscape in both countries. According to voters interviewed by the Association Press in recent weeks, from battleground Wisconsin to bellwether Dartford, England, voters said years of misinformation, scandals and lies have drained them of the source of optimism and excitement that they might once have felt about the right to vote for their future. Yeah, misinformation, scandals and lies, we've had plenty of them here. And I mean literally Donald Trump has been convicted of 34 counts of felony. He's a convicted criminal. And he's still going to be running for president of the United States. It's just bonkers. In Britain, 45% said they almost never trust government to put the nation's interests first, up from 34% in 2019. According to a survey published June the 12th by the National Centre for Social Research, the pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine war, and the country's cost of living crisis has affected living standards and the economies, it reported. 2 Tory prime ministers were ousted. Also, there was Boris Johnson, who resigned rather than be thrown out of Parliament after a boozing party in 10 Downing Street when the nation was under COVID-19 lockdown. A vote to turn the Conservative government out of power is not necessarily a vote for Labour. Opposition leader Keir Starmer acknowledged during the 27th of May debates, voters have said he still has questions about us. Have Labour changed enough? Do I trust them with my money? Our borders, our security? Starmer answered his own question was yes, of course, but the British voters told AP in the weeks before the election that they were far from sure. They promised and promised and promised, and nothing ever changes, says Shane Bassett, 34, a bar manager at a pub in Bellwether, Dartford, where the Peasants' Revolt of 1381 is said to have started. No matter who gets in, if it's Labour, if it's Conservatives, they're all the same, they all lie. In the United States, trust has been eroded by deepening political polarization, misinformation, and Trump lies about Biden's victory in the 2020 election, all amplified by social media. Roughly 2 in 10 Americans say they trust the US government to do what is right just about always or most of the time, according to a recent Pew Research Center survey. About 6 in 10 said they can trust the government with only some of the time, and about 2 in 10 said they can never trust the government to do what is right. Nearly 3/4 of American adults blame the news media for dividing the nation. According to a 2023 poll by AP and ORC, family and friends have learned to avoid discussing politics around Thanksgiving tables or at other gatherings in many places, even celebrations of the 4th of July, a national holiday where Americans mark the 1776 ratification of the Declaration of Independence from Britain, fall under this practice of restraint. In Ruskin, Wisconsin, Rebecca Eskel, 48, wonders how the vast United States, home of 262 million eligible voters and the world's biggest economy, faces a rematch that few Americans wanted. And I've said this on World News, on the Snowflake Corner and World News Rounds whenever I talk about America, guys. The American people, in my general opinion, and you can feel free to firmly disagree, they did not want to choose between 2 old white men. That's what you got to choose as of right now, at the time of this recording. And in my opinion, that's not right. I know some people was Obama the perfect president? Of course not. He had flaws. But he was popular. He was very popular. And he was popular in America, and he was popular around the world. That's why he had 2 full terms. Don't have to agree with him. But he was a lot younger, and he certainly was a lot better with his words. Whereas you have a choice at the moment. You have a choice between a president who definitely there are questions about him up here because of his age, just trying to throw pot shots and whatnot at his opponent, which is definitely what Joe Biden was doing in that debate. And then you have a man on the other side responsible, basically responsible for the country when the riots on January the 6th happened, claimed that the elections were rigged when every single court case that was put before them was shown that to be true, never accepted the results of the election, believes Vladimir Putin and Russia over his own US intelligence services. I mean, it's insane that America has to choose between those two. I've said this before, and I'll say this again, just like we do. America deserves better, so much better. And I said that when Joe Biden got in, I don't remember where it was, but I said a while back, like they should replace Joe Biden. They shouldn't stick with Joe Biden. It'd be a very bad idea. And it's come back to roost them. It does, like, even no matter how much people don't like Trump, some people are not going to put their box, tick the box for Joe Biden if he think he's not capable of being, if he's not got it anymore. I mean, the thing is like, he's had 4 years, and like, he's had a very long political career, such a long career, yeah. Like, and he's done all right as president. I think he's done all right. Has he been the worst president? I wouldn't go that far. But like, he doesn't need to do another 4 years. There's plenty of Democratic candidates are more than capable of stepping up to that plate. The problem is that they didn't build them up. They never built them up. And obviously, I would have liked Bernie Sanders to be given a run, but that's not going to happen now. But it would have been good to have seen him given a run as president. But yeah, it's pretty distasteful, really, when you think about politics, British and American politics right now. How does our democratic process result in something that the majority of the population doesn't like? Isker48 says over a sandwich in Maple Table restaurant. The last time Kathleen Baker, 64, was excited about a candidate, it was Ronald Reagan, who went on to serve 2 terms in the 1980s and exited office by referring to the country as a shining city on a hill. He was a very real person, very respectful, family-orientated, she said while walking her dog near the river Raching. You could relate to him. He felt like he was just the average man. Now she says the nasty back and forth between Biden and Trump, who each insist the other is unfit for the office, suggests neither can be trusted in digging into major problems facing the United States. People are poor, the country is struggling, and this is our focus, she said. Yeah, 100% agreement. Emmanuel McChrysty, a 58-year-old businessman, voices similar frustration. The economy, she said, while waiting in line to hear Trump speak in Raching, is his top issue. The next morning, McChrysty said she'd still vote for Trump with reservations. I'm tired of politicians working for themselves and not really getting down and asking people what they really want, McChrysty said. We're putting you in office. What are you going to do for us? The last presidential candidate to exercise high school teacher Marcus T. West 49 was Democrat Barack Obama, and he went on to serve 2 terms. He's got the importance of educators. He has good intentions, West said over breakfast with Miss Betty Kitchen. He's the last person I felt talked to me, past politics, and I like it. This year, he said of Biden and Trump, they aren't looking out for us. In Britain, the distrust is less personal. It's about scandals, think Johnson and Partygate, and the cost of living crisis. On the 22nd of May, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had good news, and a bombshell: inflation was down to 2.3%, the first time in 3 years, and he was dissolving Parliament immediately, which started the clock that required an election on July the 4th. But the visuals are what remembered about that day. Rain soaked in his suit shoulders as Sunak spoke, where his predecessors had stood for 275 years. Before an iconic black door of number 10 Downing Street, no one sheltered him with an umbrella. Protesters nearly drowned out his words by playing Things Can Only Get Better, a rival Labour campaign song used in the Tony Blair era. Things Can Only Get Better led the reports on several news sites. That's what concerns Bassett, the manager of the Walt Taylor pub, named for the leader of the Peasants' Revolt that started on the website. You're not supposed to talk about politics in British pubs, he said. The counterpart, perhaps, of the American reluctance to stir up trouble on the same topics at parties. Well, Bassett looked around at the empty dining rooms at lunchtime. There were no customers to offer, so he let it fly. The pub's energy bill last winter jumped from the usual £800 a month, that's £1,000 to £1,200, so £400. It has struggled since Christmas season to bring in the customers for a beer, and he thinks the owners are likely to sell the place for 4 years after buying it. I'm not very optimistic, he said. Thinking of thinking of his family members in Canada, Bassett added, "If I could leave my country, I would." And yeah, it's an interesting piece. Obviously, it's a bit more about, I would say there's a bit more in there about America than it is about Britain, but you can kind of feel some of the similarities and the disdain of how people are feeling in both nations about how they feel about politics. I think the key quotation that I hear a lot is politics is broken. You cannot have good politicians without trust. I don't think it's enough to talk about just the politicians, getting the right politicians to in. It's one of the biggest fundamental problems is changing the systems for the better. And the problem is both nations don't want to change their systems because it benefits certain people, certain groups, shall we say. I'd like to think that our systems will fundamentally change after July the 4th. Under a Labour government. Will there be big fundamental changes? I don't know. What I do know is that it definitely feels broken. I think what's also very angry as well is that added to both of these politics, which has not been I've not mentioned in this video as well to cap off the end of this video, is what's happening in Gaza. Regardless of how you feel about what's happening in the Middle East, let me make very, very clear. No one should be on the side of children dying. More than 13,000 kids have died inside Gaza. And I don't give a damn what side of the spectrum you consider yourself on. If you don't think that's abhorrent, you're a problem. You are a problem. And the fact that Western medias and both America and Britain are not doing enough to call out Israel to stop the suffering is wrong, regardless of how you feel about Israel and how feel the connections that you have to them. No one should be approving the deaths of so many children. And this is why a lot of people are not going to vote for Biden or not going to vote at all in the American elections. This is why a lot of people here in Britain are taking their votes away from Labour and they're going towards the likes of Greens and other independent parties or the likes of George Galloway's Workers' Party, because they feel that their voices and their concerns about Gaza are being ignored by the main political parties. And then there's obviously the talk about Ukraine, which we'll talk about another day. But what do you guys think? What do you guys make of British and American voters here? This is a bit about a combination of two. What do you think about the disparities, or do you believe with me that there's a lot of similarities between the two parties? But these people when it comes to trust, politics, economics. Let me know your thoughts about that connection yourself in the comments down below. Fascinated to hear what you guys have to say about this. But if you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching. Hope to catch you all very, very soon.